Hello and welcome to this week's Facebook Live, the episode for How to Succeed for GQ Australia. My name's Hugh Humphries and joining me tonight is Patrick Kidd, the founder of Patrick's Hair Products. How do I call you? What's your company actually called?
Oh, Patrick's, but yeah, luxury men's hair care we go by.
So that's what Patrick does.
Which is a bit of a mouthful, but yeah
so,
that's kind of it.
As we are live on Facebook, please send any questions you have to ask Patrick today. We're going to be talking about what it takes to launch an actual product in terms of creating something from scratch, in terms of the science behind it, how do you actually go about finding someone to make the ingredients, test the combinations, all those kinds of things, and then talk a little bit about business as well, now that you've been going for a little while. So yeah, keep the questions coming and we'll get to them as many as possible as we can tonight. So we'll start with, if you can give me the background of how Patrick's started. What was the whole concept of Patrick's when you very first launched?
Well, the concept of the product itself was born from, I was an electrician for a long time, but then I opened up a luxury men's salon, and through that, because it was sort of a higher price point for the haircut, because we had a sort of a different concept for that sort of thing, we basically couldn't find any products across the world that we could sell to our clients in the store that were a high-end men's product. Mm-hmm. So eventually we started looking to manufacture our own one, and then that's sort of where it all began. We thought, there was a massive gap in the market for luxury men's hair care. It didn't exist at that time. We knew we could sell it. We knew other retailers would buy it. All our consumers were sort of going across the road and buying all the expensive stuff from David Jones or whoever else. Yep. But there was nothing in the luxe hair care sort of category. Or it didn't exist then. We had to create a new category, really.
Yeah, so how long ago was that?
That was about 10 years ago. Yeah, maybe longer. The salon was like 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then we've been working on the products for about 8 years. And they've been on the market for 2. So it took a long time to get it to release. Yep. But once we did, that's when it all kind of took off from there. Yeah.
I should mention that we're here at the Entourage office at WeWork in Pyrmont, and Jack Delosa couldn't make it tonight. He had another engagement that he had to go to, unfortunately, so that's why he stuck with me in the chair. So
you're much better looking than Jack anyway.
So, we were talking about one of the things that Jack's talked a lot about in the last few episodes of this has been about the whole concept of creating something and being able to build that brand, especially when the idea of a business before you had got to that point. You started as an electrician, and then you had the idea of a business to get to creating this space, and there was a gap in the market. Yeah. So what happened next in terms of you being able to find someone to actually create you a product that you were happy with that you could then sell on the luxury market? Yeah, so
there's a few bits to it. So obviously to do a product like this, it's very expensive. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have heaps of capital behind me. So I was forced to raise capital. I couldn't raise debt at the time because I didn't have any equity or anything like that.
Yep.
But basically this is the hard part. Like there's big formulations companies in the world that make these sort of products, and there's only a few of them that make really good ones. And generally, 99 times out of 100, they won't answer emails. They just don't work with startups. So many startups, 99 out of 100 these days fail within the first 12 months, and then probably 99 out of 100 of those ones that get through will fail in the first 12 months of operating. So the big formulations companies don't want to spend heaps of money developing like new products and a full product range for a brand that never gets to market.
Well, especially when you think about a lot of the products in supermarkets and retailers and department stores and everything that are sold are owned by a surprisingly small number of very big multinational corporations that it's not all the different brands you see on the shelf. So they're not going to be like, hey, we've got these people that are making millions of products in our factories or in our manufacturers. Yeah. We're not going to necessarily want to have a chat with the little guy.
Exactly, and they're really hard to get hold of. We didn't get lucky. We were very strategic about it. We found a company in the US that we'd found out had done an equity deal with Tony and Guy about 22 years prior us doing it.
Wow.
I did try to do it in Australia for a long time, just before we get too far into it. I didn't want to put our money straight overseas. But we tried to do it in Australia for 2 years, and we couldn't get any of the formulations companies to come up with anything, half decent, basically. And no offence to anyone here, but it just wasn't, we couldn't get it to that level.
Yeah,
so we were forced into going overseas. And then the company that we found, my wife actually found it, Amy, who's our CEO as well, who kind of does everything. She found this company in the US that was arguably the best formulations company in the world. And we basically just got a flight and went straight over there to see them, and knocked on the door, and luckily enough, we ended up meeting with the COO of the company, who's which was pretty crazy.
Waiting in the lobby until
yeah,
someone
it sort of
finally
was.
comes
He
and
walked
says
down the
hi.
stairs. And
Really?
wasn't expecting us, and eventually, I don't know if it was our accents, Amy's English as well, and I'm Australian, so Americans think it's hilarious.
Two weirdos in the States
Yeah,
who
exactly,
sound
yeah.
different to everyone
But
else. Yeah.
I think the thing is they'd realised we'd flown a long way and made a big effort to come and see them, so they gave us, obviously gave us the time. And then within 3 hours of meeting them, we'd done an equity deal. They'd acquired 10% of our company.
Wow,
we
3
got
hours.
we got lower minimum orders, which is a huge thing for most startups. Minimum orders are usually 25,000 per SKU.
Right.
And if you make 8 products, I mean, you're in the hole for 3 to 5 mil straight away. So not
Just to
many
get that very
startups.
first order
yeah,
done.
yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
not including packaging or anything. So it's expensive, but we knew that if we could get these guys on board, we'd get them to give a shit, so that with the formulations, they'd make really good stuff. And then they'd hook us up with all their connects, because they've been in the business obviously a long time. The 2 owners of the company that we worked with, we got those guys to go on our board. So it just gives sort of a, made us
Extra
look like
sense of
bigger hitters.
ownership to them.
Yeah, exactly. And those guys were really into it back in the day, because it was, it was a whole new sort of concept, like luxury men's haircare. It didn't exist. It was like sort of cheap salon brands and supermarket brands. So
So you had to get their buy-in in the same way that
exactly.
you wanted to get marketing that buy-in.
Yeah. So eventually, and then they hooked us up with packaging companies in the US, and the tricks of the trade then are that if you do, say, like some of the big companies will do free design work in exchange for a manufacturing contract. So like I designed this thing on paper, but to actually CAD draw it and do all the ins and outs, and then you've got all the technical specs of airtights and all the different things you've got to go
hold them
through.
up. Let's have a look.
Yeah, well,
Let's
that's
check out
it.
the
And
product.
it does. No one can ever figure out how to open it, but because it's expensive, we put 2 locks on everything. So if you close that, that's watertight and airtight, and it is hard to open, but it will still open. But you've always got that snap over the front. And I mean, with that snap, we even set up a recording studio in Chicago to record the click.
Really?
I wanted it to be a nice sort of snappy sound, so you hear it, you put it in your bag,
it's shut,
yeah,
you know it's there.
shut. Yeah, and we did a whole bunch of stuff like.
Oh, it smells good. I can smell it.
Yeah. I'll geek out a little bit on it, but basically it's all the aluminium on the packaging is all exactly the same aluminium that Apple use on all the iPhones and MacBooks and that sort of stuff.
Right.
That was really hard to get. Luckily, I know a guy who knows a guy who steals stuff in China and got me heaps. We actually did. And then another little Apple, like sort of not rip off, but inspiration, I guess. We put a rubber gasket underneath the aluminium plate, which is like the same as a MacBook Pro on the screen, so it doesn't hit the keys.
Put it down.
Yeah, so when you put it down, it doesn't slip and
like
slide. And it sounds a bit more
soft
solid.
touch and-
like if it was like that, sort of a bit plasticky.
Yeah.
But and again, because it's an expensive product, if it's going on, say, marble or glass or aluminium or something like that,
It's not going to bang
it's not going to
metal
scratch
everywhere
it.
and
Yeah,
scratch.
and it is quite handy when it's open and it's wet, and if you've got your other hand using it for something else. You never know.
So you go into there and they're saying, all right, we'll buy 10% equity in your company and we'll do this deal with you.
Yeah.
What happens next? How did you get that product? Actually, what do they start talking to you about? Ingredients,
So-
combinations? What happens?
Yeah, so basically then you give them benchmarks. So I knew there was 8 products that I wanted to produce, and there was 4 styling products, and then 2 shampoos and 2 conditioners. And I wanted to really simplify like men's hair care. I didn't want to have names like forming creams and fibres and defining pastes and all this crap that guys are never going to remember.
Yep.
And obviously they'd go into a shop and there'd be a million different brands with a million different things and so
different
many
words for the
times.
same stuff
And because I had the shop, I knew sort of what would work in a retail environment as well as a salon environment.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I mean our brand isn't in any salons, so it's a purely retail brand. But for that reason, I wanted to make it sort of super simple for everyone, and that was that. A guy would usually come in and say, "Oh, Pat, I need some hair products." And I'd be like, "Cool, man. Do you remember what brand?" And they'd be like, "Oh, mate, I don't know. Can't remember." And I'd be like, "Do you remember what colour it was?" And they'd be like, "Well, is it blue or green?" So anyway,
some kind of blue, grey, black.
Yeah. And
Not
they
that
didn't
helpful.
give a shit. And they never will.
Yeah.
But what I had a very short amount of time with these guys because it was a busy place, obviously. So I could, within 2 questions, I could get out of them what I needed, the information I needed to get to give them the right product. So basically, I'd say, "Do you like matte or shiny as a finish?" Usually they'd say matte, and then I'd say, "Do you like light, medium or strong?" And then from that information, I could give them what product I knew would work for that.
And then you've got
So our products are
formulations,
M1, M2, M3, and S2. M for matte, S for shiny, 1, 2, 3, light, medium, strong.
Makes
So it's
a lot
that
of sense.
simple, And I always say to people, apparently you retain about 15% of whatever you're told,
Right.
And every time I talk to people about the packaging and the ingredients and get all crazy on it, I'm like, look, this is way down in the 85%. The only thing you need to remember,
the detail is
is matte or shiny,
that's what I buy.
light, medium or strong.
Right.
And it's that simple. But then obviously, so we gave them like benchmark products. So say I had a medium hold matte finish. I had a couple of products from around the world. And I'd give them to those guys and say, this is what I like about it, this is what I don't like about it, I want this colour, I want this fragrance. And then they produced samples essentially and send them to you, and then we'd test them in the store. The fragrance was a tricky one for us. We couldn't get anyone to develop really good fragrances. So we ended up using a fragrance house in New York that specialised in like aftershaves and colognes and things like that. So we actually made 8 different colognes for each different product.
Wow.
Well, one product for each. There's 8 products.
Yeah.
Different. Yeah. Because the first thing everyone does, and I don't think I've ever met anyone that doesn't. They'll open it and go, yeah, man, it's sick.
The last thing you want is a hair product that
nothing
smells
to do
rubbish.
with the performance. Yeah. But everyone smells it. Yeah. And for that reason, we spend a bit of time on that.
Getting those fragrances right.
Yeah.
So a question that's come through from Nicolina. She says, I assume there are a whole bunch of restrictions and regulations on what you can and can't put in cosmetic products, obviously. So where should someone go to get any advice or useful information if you're looking to develop a product? So watching a product, where would you direct?
There's a few different places. So any good formulations company will have people in-house to do it. So they'll have a compliance team.
Of course,
and when you're manufacturing a product, they'll say, where do you want this to be sold? So if you say, look, we need global compliance, then they'll work on an ingredient list that they know all the ingredients
are
approved
all around the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Austrade is a really good. The government have this like a government grant system called Austrade, and those guys are really clued up on what you can and can't do and different legislation in different countries. Like Japan and China is a sticky one. China, you have to test cosmetics on animals. So
really,
it's still a thing. They're working to change it, but no one knows if they will or not.
Right.
So that's a tricky one. So we don't sell in China because of that reason. Japan's very sort of they're pretty gnarly on ingredients as well. But I mean, once you do it from the beginning, and if you have good chemists and good formulations guys, they'll know what ingredients. And then you've got to have another thing too, if she's going to do her own brand or whatever, called a responsible person. So that'll be generally a company that you pay for, say in the EU or the US or someone like that. And you'll have their information written on the back of the packaging, and then that is basically tells the government of where that's going into, that it's been checked and it's been okayed by a third party.
Okay.
Which you have to pay for, which is expensive, but I mean, if you want it to go big, you have to do all that stuff.
So when it comes to getting a product made and formulated and everything, and then it comes to you got to get packaging designed, but there's more than that. You've got to get your patents or your trademarks or all of that stuff for that. Like for people who don't necessarily think about what's involved in making stuff like this. So talk me through that kind of process of the next steps. Once
I think the first thing would probably be like a website. It's hard to get domain names now. Pretty much everything's gone. And that's a big thing for a brand. Patents and trademarks are good if you've got the money to protect them. So, I mean, there's no point paying $10 million for a trademark and not having any money in the bank to be able to protect it, because then it's pointless, you know. But I mean, we did it. We got the trademark for Patrick's in the US, and everyone said there's no chance we'd get it, and we applied for it anyway and got it in the end. We had to go up against Danica Patrick, the racing car driver, who's got like a moisturiser range or something.
Right.
And then Patrick Dempsey, the actor, because he had something to do with L'Oreal or something like that.
Oh, like the Patrick's.
And then it turned out we had more sort of rights to the name, and ended up getting it. So it was a thing where everyone was like, "Don't waste your time and money," but it worked out.
It was worth it. To protect it.
I mean, it's probably one of the easier parts of the whole journey of getting.
What was the hardest part?
Packaging, custom packaging.
Really?
It's a nightmare. Yeah. Custom packaging is epic for having something that looks different and gives you a point of difference on the shelf. But no one realises how hard it is and time-consuming and expensive to create your own custom packaging.
Everyone goes, I want to make cool packaging, but what does that mean?
And that's why pretty much 99% of the stuff on the shelves all looks the same, and it's all the same tubs. And I can tell you exactly where they make it and how much they pay for it. And it's just shit. It's just cheap shit. But it is, man. It is. You can you just go onto Alibaba and you see it all. So if anyone wants to start their own brand and has a tight budget, start on Alibaba, because your minimum orders will be lower, and it's actually a lot of the stuff that the big manufacturing companies make is on the website already. But I mean, custom packaging will give you an instant point of difference on the shelf. and it'll make your brand instantly recognised. But it's very, very time consuming, it's very, very expensive, and then it's fraught with sort of like IP risk and all that sort of stuff. We had a very long issue with our shampoos and conditioners. Our full-size shampoos and conditioners have been complete for like 5 years, the actual formulas, and they won't be on the market for about 3 weeks. So it's been
that long,
nearly 6 years, and 2 court cases and lots of crazy stuff.
That's an insane amount of time just for that custom packaging.
Mate, it is, and it was a crazy, like, the way everything sort of happened with that scenario. You could never predict it, and I'm sort of, it's well off in the past now, but I don't know how likely it is happening to anyone else. But I ended up designing a valve that was the world's first lidless silicon valve, and it was basically like a valve on the bottom of a shampoo bottle like that. And when you pick it up and squirt it, it would just come out and there'd be no drips or leaks or anything.
You don't have to turn it upside down.
Yeah, you don't have to turn it up, you don't have to do lids and all that sort of stuff. And then all the silicon valves in the world at that time, or still, have a little cap that goes on the bottom that separates the silicon and then isolates the valve. So if you're not using it, you put the cap in, or if it's in storage before you sell it or whatever, or if you travel with it, you've got this little cap on the bottom. And I did that originally, and everyone I gave it to test, they couldn't bring it back to me because they'd always lose the cap. The first thing everyone does, they'd pick it off, chuck it down, and then the thing's untravelable. So I invented a valve that had that valve, but when you spun the bottom, it would isolate the valve and pull it up over this cone.
Great.
Anyway, it was a good idea, and it still is. I don't know if we'll produce it yet because of all the stuff that happened. But basically, the company that manufactures all our products for us do free design work in exchange for a manufacturing contract.
Right.
And they came to us after about 3 years and said, look guys, we've spent millions of dollars trying to develop this valve, because it had never been done before, it was new technology, hadn't been tested or anything, and it's still not done, believe it or not. But basically they said, we want to own the IP to it because we've spent so much money developing it.
Right.
And I was like, well, too bad guys, Amy's my CEO and wife is a lawyer, so our IP agreement was pretty bulletproof. And we're like, well, it's too bad, you signed an IP contract, it's ours, and you saw me draw it on the board like it's my idea.
And so then...
And then they basically said, cool man, we'll go manufacture with someone else then.
Right.
And that basically just cut us off, because we'd spent probably about $500,000 on moulds and tooling and
that whole process.
airfares and hotels, and you got to go to, we're in Chicago, so you got to go there all the time. And then, basically we were like, cool, okay, we'll go somewhere else. So we took all the designs and patents and trademarks and all that kind of stuff and went to a whole bunch of other manufacturing companies around the US, and they were all sort of a 24 to 36 month delay to get us to where we were originally. So we went back to these guys. We went back to these guys and just said, look, can we come to some sort of agreement? And eventually we did, and now it's ours for personal care, and the rest is theirs for everything else.
Right.
Yeah, and I was pretty upset about it for a while, because it's hard not to be that kind of thing.
When you slog your guts up.
But one of my board members is actually the managing director of Red Bull for Asia Pacific, and he's a legend. And him and I were down at the beach one day, and I was telling him about what happened, and he was like, mate, seriously, don't worry, what are you worried about? He goes, you've got the sickest brand on the market. He said, what do you want to be? Like some guy who runs around the world selling valves? Do you want to be a valve salesman?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, well, not really. So I sort of put it all into perspective, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, just let it go. And it's just one of those little lessons learned. Yeah, cool. But it was, we did everything right. We had an IP contract, and it was just sort of it's called like corporate bullying. It was one of those things, Yeah. But that was hard. Everything's hard. That's why there's not many of them that get through it, because it's so hard. You've got to love what you're doing or be really passionate about it to get it across the line in the end. Yeah.
Well, I guess talking about the next section, we'll move on to talking about building Patrick's as a business for you. So remember to keep asking any questions that come through on Facebook Live, and we'll get them to Patrick as well. So I've got a few coming in. So I guess for me, my personal question to start this ball rolling with you is, how many investors have you got, and how did you get them? What was that process of getting these guys on board to say, we want to invest in your product and get some equity in you guys to give you the money? And talk me through that process.
So basically, we've got about 30 investors at the moment. And to do what we wanted to do, obviously it's very expensive, so we couldn't fund it from the old business. So I couldn't raise debt, so I was forced to raise capital. I ended up going back and I went to this thing actually with a guy called Ruben Buchanan, who ran this course, was by MBE. Jack knows him really well.
Is there a person in Australia that Jack doesn't know? Is all I have to say.
Jack was in the same class as me. But it was basically, it was a thing on how to raise capital and strategic exit. And the guy, Ruben has since turned into one of my best mates, and he's a legend. But I ended up paying, I think it was $25,000 to do a course for a year on raising capital and strategic exit.
Yep.
And there was a whole bunch of us, and not that many actually did. But eventually, what I sort of realised that we had was, rather than paying like a corporate advisor, 25 grand a month or whatever they charge you, plus giving a percentage of whatever they raise you, and usually they'd go to your network of investors anyway before they'd go to their own, sort of pick the low-hanging fruit, I guess you'd say. But I ended up, because of the salon and because of the price point, and it was like drug dealers to brain surgeons and everything in between. Like, we had the wildest sort of customer demographic. But I just held a night at the store, and I wrote up an IM and had a pitch presentation. It was a bit like Shark Tank with probably 200 people.
And got a stack of
and it was fun, Like, we had whiskey and cigars, and there was chicks on motorbikes, and I mean, this was a long time ago, and it was all sort of probably very, very politically incorrect, but it was good fun. But basically, we raised, I did a concept valuation of like 2.5 million, and then we sold 10% of the company for $250,000. And we filled that night with sort of high net worth individuals and just private investors. And then that developed the first bit of sort of seed funding, I guess, which got us through, got us to Miami and got us to America and started the packaging design and everything like that. After about 12 months, then I did another capital raise at $5 million valuation with another 10%. And again, by that stage, I'd sort of met a whole bunch of guys that were sort of probably a little bit more strategic to us than just guys with money. And raised money off those guys. And there was, I think, 6 or 7 people in that raise. And that got us another $500,000. And that got everything produced and sort of as you see it now. And then about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, I raised another $2 million at a $12.5 million valuation.
So how do you keep them all happy? You've got all these investors. How do you keep them happy, and what's that long term?
You don't fail. No. It's one of those things. It is, now that we've got a few investors, and most of them I know personally anyway. Now we've sort of become good friends. But I send out an email every month, and I just do it on MailChimp, and I'll do like a cool picture, and then write a bit of text, and basically what we've done that month, what's coming up the next month, and then I rarely put financials and stuff in it. It's more about sort of, we're in the brand awareness stage at this stage. So I keep them up to date that way. Most of them, they all buy products off the website and everything. So it's they've got a vested interest in it. And it's cool, man. It's like it's a cool brand.
So I guess in that sense, what happens next in regards to, you mentioned strategic exit. I guess what does that look like for you over the next period of time? You've got to get that point to give your investors.
I mean, to get investors, it's sort of more than having a good idea. I always say to people, you have to start with the end in mind. Like, that's the most important thing. It's probably the best bit of advice I could give to anyone, is that start from your exit and figure out what it is, who's going to buy you, when and for how much, or it might be an IPO or something like that. Just what your exit's going to be, and then work back from that point. And then you'll end up sort of building yourself a perfect strategy to go forward, sort of thing. I know it sounds weird, but basically, so what I did, this is the thing, I never like to tell people too much about the exit, because I don't want them to think that I don't give a shit about the brand, or to think that I want to just sell the company as soon as someone gives me a good offer.
It for a buck.
Because the truth is, I've put the last 10 years of my life into it, of blood, sweat and tears and sleepless nights and everything you can imagine. It's like, it's fucking hard to get a product to market that's good and that has success. But basically, I sort of imagined that I was working for, say, LVMH or a L'Oreal or a Procter & Gamble or a Unilever or one of these companies. And because these guys are public, they have to keep acquiring every year to get their share price to keep going up. And generally, they don't create their own brands. They haven't had much success from it, really in the past. So it's much easier for them to acquire something. So basically, we created the perfect acquisition model for a big public company that's in the, cosmetics space. You build a brand, you build an audience. Exactly. Get everything that looks great in the perfect So
kind of
basically
concept.
What I thought they want is a brand that created a new position, preferably in luxe. Anything in luxe generally has good margins. And, obviously the brand positioning is good for the companies. Like LVMH love luxe things, that's their business, And then you'd want to have like the best distribution around the world, but not too much, which then makes the multiple on the exit difficult. So say at the moment we're in Harrods, Liberty, Harvey Nicks, Mr. Porter, Barney's, all these stores. They're all big and they're famous, but there's not that many of them. So you're not going to have huge revenue.
Right.
So you're not going to do generally like a 10 times revenue multiple in our traditional trade sale.
Yeah.
It's probably more going to be like a multiple of what they can make it worth. And our sort of target exit is between 250 and 500 million, but I can quickly show them how it's worth double that to them in the first 12 months,
for them
just
to be
because
able to
of all
capitalize on that.
the networks they've already got. So they just plug that product into their distribution systems, and off it would go. They put it into literally thousands of stores around the world. Plus, they'd make it for way cheaper. They don't need my accountants. They don't need my lawyers. They don't need all that sort of stuff. They just plug it in and off they go.
Okay.
So that's sort of the simplest way. I mean, it's a complex model, and it takes a long time to learn how to do it. But it's just starting with that end process and figuring out who you're going to sell it to and when and for how much and who's done it before and why, and then tailoring your brand to and setting up a good board. That's the other thing that we did well. I've got a kick-ass board. So all these guys that have been through this sort of stuff before, and they basically sort of guide us along. So instead of going like this and finally getting to here, they
can be more of a smooth
and I have coffees with them and chat with them and talk to them about sort of everything. And then the guys that have, I think that's probably one of the most important things. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a question from Christopher who says, if you're not selling directly to customers but to wholesalers or distributors, how do you use social media to help raise awareness of your products? Well, I guess you do have a bit of a retail model, don't you?
Yeah. Not only new though, like good question.
Yeah. Well, how do you use social media to market your products?
All the social. I mean, the other thing is there's 3 of us in our company. So it's small. I mean, we all work our asses off, but it's small. There's only Amy and Amanda and I, and all the business to business stuff is it's not easy. I mean, it's hard and it's time consuming, but they will generally help you with marketing and stuff. Only in the last probably 3 to 6 months have we actually started selling products on our own website. I wanted to build the sell through and the relationships with the Mr. Porters and the David Jones and whoever else has got it.
Before creating
exactly. But now that we're getting the sell-through and the brand's getting some awareness through their channels, we've started doing a bit on our own website. And obviously for us, there's an extra chunk of profit in there because we're not giving the retailer, a 50% margin or whatever. We keep that 50, which means we can sort of send it for free and, box it well and package it well and get it to someone fast and that sort of thing. The social media, everyone always says that I should do more of it, but I get a bit embarrassed about it and a bit self-conscious. I don't think anyone really gives a shit. But I don't know. It just is what it is. The Instagram stories are probably a thing I do a bit more of now, which I really like. I like seeing what people are up to, and it seems real as opposed to a picture. I mean, we're building all that at the moment. Our website's about to get a major sort of overhaul, and we haven't even done. What do you call it? Not CRM. What's the weird SEO? Yeah. We haven't done SEO on our own website yet, so it's all pretty new. Yeah. But there's just a lot to do for only 3 people.
Well, another question has come through from Laura on that note, who says, with e-commerce making really big global brands more accessible, do you think that there remains enough desire and loyalty for Australian brands? If they can find the best of the brands that exist overseas that they couldn't necessarily before. Do you think there's enough loyalty that Aussies want to buy Australian brands?
I think it's better for us because usually Australians don't want to buy Australian stuff. If you go to America, the Americans love it. If you go to the UK, the European, they love it.
The Australian
they love
products.
an Australian brand. Yeah, you go to Asia, they love Australian brands. And Australia is 1% of the global luxury market. So for us, we're in DJs and Harrods and that's it. And I wouldn't go anywhere else really. We don't that's enough to kind of give us the brand positioning. And then we focus on our overseas markets from there. Right. Yeah. And the US and the UK obviously are big ones for us. And Japan has recently become quite big for us as well. And then Korea is another one which I've heard is like really big. Yeah. So we're sort of just starting to talk to some stores and stuff over there. Cool. Yeah.
Another question has come through from Christian who says, have you ever had a product of yours tank?
Nah, not yet. Touch wood. You know what? God's honest truth, we've never even had a complaint.
Really?
Never. But I spent 6 years.
That's got to be some kind of record.
Developing this stuff. So it's good. Yeah. I mean, you do get like delays in shipping and stuff like that, and someone might write you an email saying, "Hey man, where's my hair product?" And you send them a tracking number or whatever. But never about the product. I mean, it's a good product though. It's expensive, so you'd want it to be good. So it performs well, it works well. Yeah. Yeah. Nah, not yet. To touch wood.
Another question from Mike has come through. He says, when it comes to mastering success in business, does the age-old saying quality over quantity still apply?
Yeah, I reckon. Yeah, but I have different. I know a lot
You're
of guys.
biased.
Yeah. I'd rather buy better and buy less. But some people can't afford to buy, expensive things and end up buying sort of cheaper stuff. But I know a lot of guys with a lot of, like sort of lower end products in supermarkets and chemists and stuff that make way more money than I do. Yeah, so I don't know. It's a tough question. Like, I guess it's up to the individual what they want to do.
Work.
Yeah.
Depends on who's making it work.
Yeah. And I mean, if it's something you're putting on your body, then I tend to think I'd go with a brand would trust a bit more. I don't want to beat anyone else down, but I mean, there's great products out there that are sort of cheaper. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's more up to the individual. Yeah.
Well, a question's come through from Don, who says, "Do you still run the hair salon?"
No,
then,
I thank God.
Well, as a follow-up to that, if not, so when was it a viable option for you to let it go and then put all of your time into the Patrick's products?
Yeah,
it's a great question.
It was basically perfect timing, and it is a good question. I let the shop go about 3.5 years ago. It was 3.5 years ago. And what we did with the shop was it was like a cash business. So we'd make sort of 15 to 20 grand a week, and you'd probably get 10 of that in cash, which, if you're a bit of a dodgy dude or whatever, you could funnel a lot of cash through it. I know a lot of people that do it. But what we did was we pumped pretty much every dollar through the business. I probably took $200 out of the thing in 8 years. And only because I knew that one day we'd either get bought or there'd come a time when the books would make it sort of worth doing that. And what happened was, with the shop that we were in, there was like 6 or 7 other shops all in a line, and everyone else was on a month-to-month lease. And because my wife and lawyers are, she's a lawyer, she basically made a bulletproof retail agreement, and a developer came in and bought the block, but we still had like a 2-year lease left on our business, so they couldn't do the development.
Right.
And then because our financials were like really good, they offered us a ridiculous amount of money to move, which we did. So I didn't sell the business, I basically just sold the lease.
Right.
But the only reason I could do it for such a high price was because I declared all the cash.
You had such
and made it and made the financials look good.
Well, I guess the follow-up question from that too, from Don, is is it possible to run a side hustle while working full-time or part-time?
Yeah, I mean, Amy and I do a bit of consulting now to people, and my first sort of thing is to them like, if you're serious about it, no, I don't reckon. I mean, you can do stuff all night and, but then you're just going to be ruined in your day job, and I don't know. Yeah. I mean, people can do it, like never say never. But if it was me, I'd commit to it. And
you get to that point where
we had to. We were at a point at the end with the salon where we just hated it, and it just wasn't an enjoy. It was very stressful. There was lots of staff, and it wasn't a scalable business. Mm-hmm. Like now, this thing, it's so scalable. It's so sellable. I get to travel the world, go to the best parties, drink the best booze. I know the coolest people from all over the world, get discounts on all the fashion stuff that I'm into.
Yep.
And it's good, and it's finally sort of all worth it. And it wouldn't have happened doing multiple salons. Salons are hard work. Like anyone who owns one can tell you. No one would probably understand unless you'd owned one. They're such a nightmare. They really are. Like I tip my hat to anyone who runs one because they're bloody hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it was me, I'd commit to a business full on. I think it makes you give a shit then, and if you give a shit, then it's a lot more likely to succeed. And then it's yours to lose at that point. If you mess
have
it
that
up.
extra onus on
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
doing it well.
Yeah.